All right, well, it's 6:35, so I want to go ahead and get started so we can obviously finish. So welcome to everyone for our ASQ 1401 Greater El Paso member meeting. My name is Keith Fong. I'm the section chair. So normally the section chair introduces the speaker. So I guess that's my privilege today to introduce myself. I am a Six Sigma Master Black Belt. I'm Shannon Red X Master and Robust Engineering Coach. So I've got a few certifications, and I spent 25 years working for Delphi, a tier one automotive supplier, in an organization where over time, I worked on products like anti-lock brake systems, fuel systems, smart remote actuators, various sensors, and whatnot. And about 20 of the years I was involved in continuous improvement. And this talk is some of the distillation of some ideas, that we've worked through those years, and then sometimes from things not working. So in fact, actually a lot of it's from wondering why isn't what I'm doing, more effective or more beneficial. So, we learn from doing, and let's get started. So again, this presentation is titled The Way of the Quality Warrior. So first, well, what should you get out of this? What I hope at the end of this, we're not going to talk about tools really, but I'd like to really introduce maybe a different perspective and ideas about quality, or maybe just like you already think this, and it's you find somebody who agrees with you. I think there's some useful models for implementing some of these quality concepts, particularly like dealing with ourselves and dealing with others. And perhaps some of those ideas will make you more effective in trying to drive quality. So the agenda, we're going to talk about quality, like what is quality, then the roles in quality, issues of mind, because how we think is essential into driving the quality. The situations, like, okay, well, here's some of what happens. And then strategy and skill. So the last couple are actually pretty brief. So at the end of each one of them, like if you have a question, you can go ahead and put it into the chat. My thought is perhaps at the end of each of the sections, we can check, are there questions? And, you can put them in the chat, or, we can get off mute and share. So let's start with quality. So quality, as I see it, is goodness, right? What the expected is transparent. For example, you hop in your car, you turn the key, the car starts. We were just talking about a lack of water, but if you walk to the faucet and you turn it, you have water. If you flip a switch, the light turns on. So, it's transparent. You get it when you expect it. Now, the unexpected should be delightful, right? If it's not if it isn't delightful, then it suggests poor quality. So something beyond what you're expecting. Now, Yoda, being our great master of all things quality, when he was talking to Luke, we can remember what he said about quality, right? So, for my ally is quality, and a powerful ally it is, right? Profound knowledge creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us, and you must feel the quality around you here, between you, between me, the products, the processes, everything. So, quality is everywhere. It is everything, right? But the issue is that it's best explained by the ladder of abstraction. So the first, quality operates all up and down this ladder. And the base of the ladder is concreteness, right? It's something is actual physical. And if you think back to, if you think of like the American Society for Quality, it started out as the American Society for Quality Control. And quality control involves a lot of inspection. You're measuring dimensions and weights and, features. So is it doing this exact thing? You're dealing very much with the concreteness. But, yes, okay, it has the right dimension or feature, whatever, but that doesn't really represent that idea of quality, right? Yeah, it meets a spec. That doesn't, yeah, it's true, but it's not really a strong, um, doesn't necessarily mean that people are joyful using it, right? And that's where the abstraction of quality is the what we tend to think about more and more these days, right? As we go to an economy that's less about physical products and more about service and knowledge, you know, we really move ourselves to a more abstract level, right? What's satisfaction? What's a delight? Those things, you can't run out and measure them with a caliper. But this is a key. We working in quality have to go up and down this ladder, right? If we want to satisfy people, then it really is important the dimensions of that product we're making, or it's really important on how we're delivering that service. But at the end of the day, it's going to move up in terms of the customer response into the abstraction. So as we try to say, hey, where are we working at, and how are we trying to improve things, we do have to be cognizant that, you know, if we're talking at a different level, we're not going to be successful in advancing quality, improving quality, because we're not talking about the same thing. If I'm talking about a dimension and you're talking about your reaction, your emotional reaction to something, we're not going to solve this, but they're both valid, right? And they're both connected. So this is a really key idea. So we should define quality, and I really think quality has to be defined in the context of what of its opposite. And so I've put quality and problem, it's kind of a yin and yang. You can't know joy without knowing sadness. You can't know, life without death. I mean, these things have to be there present for each other. And so, when I want a general definition of quality. I don't really want to say, oh, it's, well, for example, Joseph Duran, he would say, quality is fitness for use. Okay, that's fine. I mean, it's true, but it's not necessarily, it's not that general. Philip Crosby, he said, meets specifications, right? Well, what if you're dealing with things that don't have specifications? There's so many things in our lives where we want to be satisfied, but they don't come with specifications. For example, uh, being, well, when you could go to a restaurant, like, okay, well, how long should it be before somebody comes, the waiter comes to the table, right? Is there a specification? Likely you don't have one. Maybe the company, maybe the restaurant does, but a family restaurant, probably not. So, meeting specs isn't complete. It's not wrong, but it's limited. So how I would define it, moving on, is, I'd say a problem is the extent that reality does not satisfy customer expectations, right? It's just like the customer is expecting something and they're not quite getting it. Maybe it's a small difference and maybe it's a huge difference, right? But there's an expectation that's not being satisfied. And then, of course, the quality is at the extent to which it is fulfilling that. So we're basically on a spectrum. We're moving from one end to the other. Are we satisfying expectation? Are we not satisfying expectations? The challenge, of course, using this kind of definition is, well, specifications are really hard, or expectations are really hard to measure sometimes. But that said, we still have to satisfy them. We can still be discontent and there not be a specification for that. So this is going to come back to our role, right, as people involved in quality. So customers, again, getting back to the expectations, they're constantly increasing. Arvind and I were talking, and he mentioned earlier this, before we started this presentation, he was saying, hey, the Kano model. Well, what does the Kano model say? It says, well, whatever is delightful today, tomorrow is just going to be expected, right? So consider this example. Televisions, the Sony Trinitron, 32 inches, with standard definition and a CRT. It had the aperture grill. I mean, it was a pretty great TV at that time. But, things have been moving on, and who wants that TV in their house today? Because, look at what else is available. Sony makes the Bravia. It's 65 inches. It's got 4K resolution, which is 27 times the resolution as the Trinitron TV. It's got this organic LED screen, which is better image. It has sound coming through the screen, for God's sakes. You can control it with your voice. So, would somebody today be satisfied with a Trinitron, the 27-inch or 32-inch? I don't think so, right? Because it's been moved on. And in terms of cost, for all practical purposes, I mean, there's the same cost now as it was then. I mean, you adjusting for inflation and how much of the time. So the expectations are constantly increasing. And so again, none of us would be, I think, looking forward to putting a huge bulky CRT into the house because we have a better option today. The competitive marketplace has moved. The other thing is here, the example I have here with the Sony TV is one company for the same product, but expectations are also being driven by people's interaction with other products and other services. So, if you use Amazon.com, your experience with Amazon.com is going to influence your experience, your satisfaction of your experience with your mobile phones provider, right? Or, with some other services that you might get, you're saying, well, I feel so much, I'm able to do this and get this and that from dealing with Amazon, and I don't get that same responsiveness that I from this other supplier. And even if they're not competitors, the expectations being set by the strongest, the most satisfying experiences. Oops. So for us, increased expectations are really opportunities for a quality warrior. I mean, the game is getting, more and more demanding. And if that means that, just, hunching down and putting your elbow, your shoulder into the wheel and pushing really hard, you're not going to be able to do it just by force, right? The techniques and the methods that we understand, we can help satisfy those customer requirements, understand those customer requirements or expectations so that, whoever or whichever organization we're working for can be more competitive, right? Can be a leader. So that's what I see as quality. So again, I don't know if anybody has questions yet, or if anybody's, I don't see the chat. So let me move it over here just so I can check. I don't see any questions on chat, but if not, if there aren't any questions or comments, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next item. Hold on. Okay, whoops. So the next topic is roles, right? So, again, we're going to talk about the way of the quality warrior. So who's around here, right? Who's this engaged? The first thing is departments. I think we ought to talk about like, where are we in the organization? And so, what do these departments, what does sales do? Like, well, they sell stuff, right? I mean, they're going out and getting business. We got security. What does security do? Well, they're making sure people aren't robbing things. People aren't coming into the facility that shouldn't be in there. That kind of stuff. Purchasing. Well, purchasing goes and buys the things that we need for the business. Housekeeping. Well, housekeeping cleans. Shipping. Well, shipping takes our stuff and sends it someplace, right? So, but what does quality do? Like, if you had to say, like, what does quality do? Anybody have, like, yeah, I work in quality. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you create quality? It's like, oh yeah, because of you and everything's good. So is that the department that does that? And I would say probably that's not what our quality departments are doing, right? Are the quality departments the ones who create the quality? So I will say this, the quality department does not create quality. And let me give you a little example of a little story about why you could say that. So once upon a time, I was teaching a class, and the students were in the were from the product test test lab. They were technicians. Some of them were new hires. Some of them had 10 plus years of experience, right? So they'd ask me, hey, go in, can you teach the measurement system analysis to our team? Because, they're running measurements all day long. That's their job. All right, that's fine. So get them in the room. And here's the question. What is the key function of your job? So all these are test technicians. Again, some of them have more than 10 years of experience. What are you supposed to do as your principal function? So, they start throwing out a bunch of different ideas. What do you think they say? What does a test technician do? Well, the consensus answer is our job is to pass parts. Now, with that kind of mindset, you have to ask the question, what could possibly go wrong? What could go wrong if, as a test lab technician, you think your job is to pass parts? Well, I have a little story with that. So once upon a time, well, before this even, we were building prototype parts, and these were sensors. You have a little connector, and anyways, they built these connectors, and the prototype assembly group reversed the leads, basically. Positive was negative, negative was positive, and they send this tray of parts over to the test lab. The test lab receives them, plugs them in, they fail. So what do? They look at it and they figure, oh, the wires are backwards. So they rewired the test stand, tested them. They all delivered the right, the expected results. And then they packaged it up and shipped it to the OEM for their prototype build. And then the OEM puts it into their car. And then what happens? It doesn't work, right? They're not happy. So passing parts is not their real function, right? My argument would be that, or my answer would be that their principal function is generate reliable, meaningful, timely data, right? This is the function, to me, of a quality organization. We need to generate reliable, meaningful, timely data, right? So I break that down into a couple of phases, right? Because the primary role is to reveal the true state. Like, what is our situation right now, right? I don't think, and we could look at our roles and say, well, what does the quality department do? Well, we fill out paperwork, we prepare for audits, we take the customer complaints and we answer the customer complaints. We run some control charts and data and this kind of stuff, right? But step back, and if you look at all the documentation that we generate in quality organizations, what is the fundamental purpose? Honestly, well, I shouldn't say honestly, but truly, what is it good for? And I would say it's to know your state. Are we okay? Are we not okay? Do we have to fix something? Do we not have to fix something? Right? Unfortunately, I think in a lot of quality organization or quality teams I saw one quality organization that collected data for their control charts that they would analyze, that they plan to analyze at the end of the month for processes running hundreds, if not thousands of parts per day. So what's the value of generating a control chart? I mean, the control chart is to know, is my process stable? Am I going out of control? And if you don't see it for, I don't know, 20, 30 days, what's the benefit? So they just didn't understand their role. They thought, yeah, we're supposed to generate this data because somebody, or we're supposed to generate these charts because somebody is requiring us to generate these charts. We don't actually do anything with them. We just basically count on end-of-line rejects to tell us if we have to react. So the primary role of a quality group, in my view, is reveal the true state of your product or your processes and your business. And I'd argue that a lot of quality teams don't see that. I'd say, hey, you're basically cutting off your arms and legs because you think we're supposed to generate, another document. Oh, we're supposed to prep for an audit. But no, we need to provide the information that helps every other part of the organization run better. And then the secondary role is, improve the true state, right? I mean, one thing is know our current state. The next state is get us to a better state, and the things that we know, right? The our ability to deal with statistics, the documents that we create, all of those to me give us a, kind of an X-ray vision, right? We can see deeper in because we understand how to handle this data, right? When we get this data, we can turn it into something much more meaningful. And so that's to me is the role of quality as an organization. It's, hey, what's the business state? I don't think we shouldn't be there just because we have to have a quality group to fill out paperwork. Okay. So roles in the quality. So this talking about individuals, right? We have, we have the analysts and technicians, they're collecting the data, doing analyses, that kind of thing. You have your, the builders of the quality, and you would say, hey, quality engineers, reliability engineers, they have that role. You have the auditors, right? They're kind of policing the systems, right? You have a quality management system. Is everybody, adhering to it? Are they following the procedures? So, and then you have, the role of quality manager, orchestrating the efforts of quality organizations, right? Whether it's, hey, what are we delivering? What are we receiving? Right? So these are, if things are okay, you hardly notice these people, right? They're invisible. There is a role that gets a lot of visibility, right? And that's when things go bad, you have the role of firefighter. Now, in my particular case, there was quite a long time when I was, that was my job, right? Just, hey, whenever somebody has a problem, go out and help. But you know, you get, it's a visible role, right? If you save some plant manager from having to face an angry customer or something, or an angry supervisor, whatnot, or director, yeah, they really value that, and you can end or prevent or overcome what could be potentially existential threats. I mean, it's exciting work, but I think there's a real limit to being a firefighter, because I originally had thought to call this presentation, the way of the firefighter, but I thought, no, we're more than that, and we're better than that. And so that takes us to, a quality warrior. What, instead of just like fighting the latest crisis, we have to face the whole span, and we have to understand like the forces that, we talk about opposites, right? You have joy and despair, right? You have to have them both together. Now, the thing that we want, the greatness in our organization, and we want the awfulness in somebody else's. Okay. It's, we want our customers to understand how good we are because the others are worse. You know, it's always good to follow, when you do speaking, the best place to go is after the worst person, right? Because the contrast is so stark. Well, that's what we want to drive here. And the key here is, when we do firefighting, we look for root causes, but there's a real fundamental difference being a firefighter and a quality warrior, because the quality warrior is out to eradicate the seed of the root cause. It's not like, oh yeah, we figured out that this thing isn't okay, so we've stopped that. But why could that not okay situation exist? The quality warrior has to go to that level. We have to go deeper. It's like, what's going on here that makes that possible? And of course, that's it's awfully easy when you're dealing with problems, or you're just filling out paperwork to end wherever is okay. But that's not our objective. Our objective is to go deeper. And that means if it takes us to here, why don't we go another step or another step until we find out really what's the seed to this problem? What's the seed of the root cause? That's what's going to distinguish us between being a firefighter and being a quality warrior. So the root cause seed lives somewhere in the system, right? Lives in the system. And, remember, systems are, groups of interacting, interrelated entities, right? That form this unified whole. So when any organization you're a part of, you have suppliers, you have customers, you have, employees or members, you have systems, processes, maybe you have machines, software. You have all these things, right? And if you have a problem, the seed is somewhere in here. So in this case, where this graphic shows something related to rehabilitation, actually. So they're saying, hey, if you're having a problem where you're not successfully rehabilitating your customer, your client, right? What's driving that? Is there something, where does that seed exist? So it's really, really important, right? Because all these systems work, or at least they operate to some level. The things that energizes them is, the rewards, the punishments, and resources, right? So if the outcomes aren't what you expect, you have to look at, okay, well, are the processes okay? But then are there things that encourage bad behaviors, right? Are there things that are like sowing these seeds of destruction, that are causing all of these problems? And a good place to start looking is, what are the rewards, what are the punishments, and what are the resources? And for example, I was helping out a line, and they couldn't, it's $1 million line, right? Everything was automated except for carrying the trays of parts between state, offloading from one automated line and putting it into the test station, which was totally automated, right? The thing, had vision system. It would see where parts were and it would pick them up and pass them around. Anyways, they call me up and say, hey, we're having too many rejects for leak. Okay, cool. I'll come over and I'll look at it. So come over, look at it, and where's the data, right? Oh, well, it's all on the machine. Okay, do you have it on a display or something? No, we don't have it. We don't have that. So whip out the USB stick, give me the data. I go through the data. I'm like, guys, you have like 80% reject because of machine faults. You don't have, you have like 2% due to leak. Why am I here, right? But the fundamental problem was that they did not put in real-time SPC because, well, it cost a little money and they didn't have, the choice was, well, I don't even think it was considered, right? Because once I brought it up to them, I'm like, well, that's a lot of money, like less than $2,000 for on $1 million machine. But our supplier in Europe could connect via the internet and see what was going on our machine. And we could be in the same building. We had no idea. In order to get data, you had to walk up to the machine and then actually interface, and they would write it down on a piece of paper that they would deliver to the analyst that would then get entered into, the quality system. This is not that long. This is only like 3 years ago. So, the resources, the rewards, it's like, okay, we'll do things the way that we've always done them, which is we'll just write on a piece of paper, right? And then we'll analyze it at the end of the month. That doesn't work, right? But that's where the resources weren't going, right? With the idea of like quality, I mean, that quality organization didn't even see itself as an active participant in the design of the equipment, which was, horrifying to me. So, but, it certainly gave me a few weeks of work. So, all right. So before I go on to the next item, I don't know if we had any questions about the roles, but I think this is the big thing, the role of the quality warrior.
Sorry, Keith. I think there was either a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay, let me look at the chat then.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So we have, are we to translate expectation into qualitative and quantitative measures to be or to be in conformance with, convert expectations and the business analyst job? Actually, I would say, hey, as a quality organization, we should be demanding a role in that, because like, we work with voice of the customer, right? We work with voice of the process. We should be ones to say, hey, what can we do? What is possible? What is our customer saying? What are they not saying? What do they not know? Right? There is something that we have to be aware of with customers, and that is sometimes customers don't know what, well, often customers don't know what they want. They don't live in our world, right? They don't live in, that they don't do whatever company you work in, you do it all day long, every day. And one of the things that can happen is you think what you do is understood and known to everybody else, when in reality it's only really known well to you. And so, for us in the quality organizations, we have to say, hey, do we understand our customer need? Do they understand us? And if we show them stuff, do they start to understand and recognize, oh, that's what I want. I said I wanted this, but I really want that, right? They can't articulate, you know, very well what they want. Generally, they want more or better of the same thing that they have. But if something's really transformational, then, you know, they'll be like, why would I want that? And I think, if you think about smartphones, do you remember when the iPhone first came out and, the BlackBerry, it's called the Crackberry, right? Oh, you have to have your physical keyboard, right? Because the physical keyboard's this great thing. Well, we know what's happened to BlackBerry. I mean, versus the Apple iPhone, right? The every basically, what is it, 90 some odd percent of the phones are, with screens, with no physical keyboard, right? So, again, yes, I think we as the quality group, you have to say, hey, where do we fit into this so that we, with our specialized knowledge and training, go and, you know, help people who maybe don't think about it in the terms that we do, right? So yes, we should be involved. I wouldn't want it left to the business analysis analyst, because I think in the quality organization, you tend to have a wider view of what's going on and what's possible. I think, maybe it's not true in every organization, but as you deal with problems, you tend to see a lot more areas. So, as you try to get things fixed, and if you deal with a customer and they're complaining to you, you can understand what they're complaining about. So yeah, definitely. We ought to be a big part of it. So we've talked about roles. Let's go on to the mind, right? So I say the quality warrior's first responsibility is to bring order to chaos and understanding to confusion, right? So again, that goes back to true state, right? What is the true state? Now, if you are called into these crisis situations, the first thing you have to do is like start organizing things. And you know, Valeria Tarango is on the call and or on the presentation, and when she joined the group that I was in at the time, right, she was coming in as a new person. I said, well, when we get called to the plant to solve a problem, or we get called into some urgency, no matter what, no matter what, we have to be a source of calm. We have to know, we, even if we're ready to scream and run away, we have to, people are going to look to us, and depending on how we react, they're going to decide whether or not they're going to get into some crazy mental state, right? So even if we're having a meltdown, excuse yourself, go to the bathroom, have your meltdown there, but come back calm, cool, and collected, because we, in the quality organization, again, we want to know true state. We want to bring it. We want to be data driven, and a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion is because people don't have their data together, right? They have all these signals that they don't know how to process. And I think, as we deal with all these quality tools, we learn ways of putting data together that turns it into meaningful information. That's something that in our practice, we ought to be pretty good at. So this is the first, responsibility is get things organized, right? For in the sense of, what are we looking at? What does it mean? Now, here's an important issue. A quality warrior rarely has the power of hierarchical authority, right? You're not the boss. You don't have hiring, firing authority, right? It's incredibly rare. You are really, a supporting player in this, right? So you can't go in there and say, hey, you know what, do this or else. You just don't have that. So it's really key to understand that our influence comes from how people regard us, right? The people that we're helping. And, I have a pretty broad view of like, who are we helping? because, in some ways, when we talk about voice of the customer, if we go out and understand the voice of the customer, we then are serving them, right? We're serving them to help our organization understand it. At the same time, when we talk about voice of the process, we're helping our organization understand, how do you serve that? So, and I think that it goes all the way into suppliers. It doesn't, the box, I say, if you ship a box, your company's name is on it, not your supplier's name. So it really makes me crazy when you know, you have a problem and then people in your team, your company starts saying, hey, well, it's this supplier, and trying to throw a supplier under the bus. Like, hey, who picked the supplier? One time I was helping a team. We were having a lot of problems. The team just bad mouthing the supplier. And I was like, you keep talking so bad about the supplier. Why do you use them? It says, well, that's the only supplier that would quote. Like, maybe because, maybe you should make good with these people because they are willing to work with you and nobody else is, right? But again, I take an expansive view. We are serving, you know, our company, we're serving our peers that work within this company or organization, we're serving our customers, we're serving our suppliers, right? We're serving our community in general. And so we have to, work to be well regarded, right? That we're somebody they can turn to and that can feel like, yeah, you're somebody worthy of good regard. So this leads us to the virtues of Bushido, right? If we think about the way of the samurai. And, the first is righteousness. We're rigorously just, honest, right? This is a virtue that we should definitely have if we're going, because we want to represent the true state, right? Courage. We're going to take risks with intelligence and strength, right? So it's courage, not rashness. So if we say, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? What are the trade-offs? And, we're going to be considered, and again, that comes back to practice and experience and knowledge. But when we say, hey, why should we do this? How should we do this? Again, that's the courage part of this. We're going to act, but we're not going to be dumb about it. Benevolence, compassion. So the powerful care for the weak. And in this, there are situations where we have to be the voice for the ones who can't really defend themselves in the moment. And sometimes that means, when you're in a location and the customer can't see or the supplier can't see, and you've got to argue for their interests. I mean, that's because that's the right thing, right? Again, we need customers to be satisfied. We need to have them fulfilled, but at the same, and we have to create a sustainable business, but I don't think those are in contradiction, right? But sometimes, people want to take shortcuts, and somebody has to advocate for the ones who can't advocate for themselves in the moment, at least. Respect. So the treatment, how we treat others at all times. I mean, we don't call people names, there's not diminishing or minimizing people's contributions. Really, it's, I'm an engineer by training, and I tell people engineering is a team sport. There is nothing of great accomplishment in engineering that was done by one person. I mean, yeah, maybe you came up with this one idea, but putting it out across the entire world, those kinds of things, no, it takes a team. It takes a large team to the point of an army. We think about right now what's going on with the producing and distributing the vaccines. I mean, that's an enormous task, right? So, we don't do it as an individual. It's being done as a team. And so everybody in the team has to feel honored and respected. Integrity. So speaking and doing are the same, right? What I say is what I do. And I think that's pretty straightforward. But if you're going to be the one reporting on true state, this is absolutely essential. Honor. So you decide, and I think honor and integrity are awfully tied here. So I don't know why they're separate, but how you decide and how you execute, that demonstrates how you are. Loyalty. So we serve those that we're indebted to. And, again, I take a pretty broad view of this because I view us as members of a society, right? And being, if we're going to serve our society, and serving our company, our organizations, our companies, it should be in the service of our societies too. I hope there's not some disconnect where, you know, you want to tear down society. And so, or your organization does. It's like, well, I hope not. I hope it's, to raise us all up. And self-control, right? Hew to what is right and decided. We're not going to be, temper tantrums, pouting, those kinds of things. Even if we don't like stuff, or it doesn't come out the way that we want, you know what? We're gonna be big about it. So those are the things that help, I think, create that regard that people are going to hold for us. And this is key, right? We can't, you know, it's the reputation part of this. If you lose, if you do something that undermines your reputation, it takes an awfully long time to recover it, and it'll never be what it was, right? It'll never be what it was. Maybe it'll be 3/4, but at best. But once you said, oh, there's a term from programming. It's flip the bozo bit. So once you said bozo equal true, getting that bit flipped to bozo not equal to true or equal false, it's awfully hard to get it unflipped, right? If people decide, yep, you're a bozo, say whatever you will, I'm not listening, right? So again, this is the key in the virtues. Now, there's attitudes that are essential to us, right? The first, at least what I think is the first, is optimism. You have to believe that improvement is possible, right? If we don't think, yeah, this, there have been really tough situations where we're working something that's not coming out. And, in some ways, you got to keep the spirit going. The team is capable. We can win, but, we got to believe it's possible. And, we aren't going to quit. Now, you also have to be skeptical. Skepticism is really important because self-deception is so powerful, right? When you're tired and you don't want things to you really want things to work out and that they're not working out, and so maybe you'll just accept some data that's kind of not okay. We have to be really wary of that. And so, skepticism is important, right? It's like I'm always questioning when I'm working on something and we got some results. Well, is there any data that's coming that contradicts what I believe? I am always looking for that. And I'm okay if it comes out, because I fear that, we're going to misled ourselves. And that's always possible. I've had cases where the data says one thing and it's, boy, it doesn't quite, I don't know, but even if it came out matching exactly what I believe, I'm still on the lookout for contradictory signals. Curiosity, right? We have to be curious, a desire to learn, understand. And it's not just about products and processes. It's also about the people we work with, the places that we work, right? I mean, it's been a joy in my career to be able to go internationally. And, I worked in Mexico. I've worked with teams in Asia and Europe and across the United States. So, we have to be curious about everything in our, around us, because that's going to also inform how we approach things. Humility. So the people we serve bring knowledge and ability that must be respected. And I bring this one up because I've dealt with consultants who are abrasive and arrogant. And, being the guy working on the company side with, I used to have to, there was one consultant who would come in and basically every time he talked to the managers, I would have to go in and talk the managers down, like, hey, it's okay. You don't have to go, to set the baseball bat down. Don't go beat this guy to death because he's just so obnoxious, right? Because fundamentally, it wasn't respecting what they knew and what they had to contribute. And one of the things, doing problem solving is as one of the principal functions is it's real easy to say, oh, I know how to solve problems better than you. But if you survive to adulthood, you know how to solve problems. And if you survive to adulthood, you know how to manage risk. Now, is it at the level, at a super high level? Maybe not. But who am I to say, oh no, you're totally lacking, right? And that can come across. It's like, hey, we're going to build you up. Maybe you're playing at one level, but we think you can raise you to the next level. That's where the humility has to come in. Maybe you're going to teach me, right? Maybe I'm the one who, again, go back to that skepticism. Maybe I'm the one who needs the lesson. So we're coming to finally the spirit of attack. So the quality warrior does not wait to be told to act. This is something that you will often find is, hey, this person is sitting there not doing what, why aren't you like, there's a problem here, why aren't you doing something, right? But as a quality warrior, we're in there, we're monitoring states, we're saying, hey, this isn't as good as it could be, this isn't where it should be, right? We need to act. So you have to understand what is the organization's direction. So when I was working at Delphi, I looked at it and said, okay, how do I fit into the system? I said, oh, the chief engineers allocate funds to pay for my salary, right? So it's the chief engineers who are the ones, in many ways, my direct customer. And I would say, okay, what does the chief engineer need? What problems does the chief engineer have that I can help with, right? I didn't go to the chief engineer and say, hey, tell me what to do. I mean, it's like, okay, chief engineer tells you the things that the chief engineer needs. I mean, it's not a secret. But then you have to be open to saying, hey, what are my skills? What can I bring to this to help the chief engineers get the goals, right? So I'm being mindful of what the organization needs and how I can serve that, right? And I'm not going to wait to be told what to do. This is an essential element of being a quality warrior, right? You can be well regarded, but if you don't act, well, you're not a warrior, right? You have to act. So now some of these things that you're going to do, right? You're going to seek the opportunities to improve, like how you understand the situation, right? Like, hey, we can report things better. We need to be tracking these other things, right? We need to stop tracking some things. You develop the skills of others, right? I think us in quality, we need to raise people up, right? It's to share knowledge with them, increase their abilities. So, whether it's formal, informal, that's what we do. It's like we should be the kind of people who make the people around us better. We identify and propose, improvements that can enhance these systems. So we generally tend to have a good, if you're sincere about your interest in quality, you think in systems. It comes pretty naturally, right? So we're going to look at, hey, how can we help the system here, right? And it's really important to document and share what you're doing and the lessons you're learning, right? Because when things are good, they become invisible. And you know, it's amazing how fast people can go from pain to absolute amnesia, right? From one day to the next day. It's like, oh my God, yesterday the building was on fire today. Oh yeah. What have you done for me? Like, it's like just yesterday we solved this problem, right? So when things get calmed down, amnesia reigns. So again, you need to let people know, understand that, yeah, you're making a contribution and that this is stuff to support and continue. So that's the mind part of it. I don't know if there's any questions about that.
See nothing in chat.
Okay. Yeah. So, but the mind part of it is like super important here because really, when it comes to quality, it is a thinking person's game, right? So let's talk about situations. So I love the movie Apollo 13. I think it's a really, really great movie. And after the command module's oxygen tank blows up, right? And they're talking about getting them, these astronauts back. And the flight director, Gene Kranz, is talking with his group and like, hey, wait a second, we only have 45 hours. And then some guy goes, no, you have 16 hours. And he's like, wait, we need more, like 60 hours to get them back. What are we going to do? Right. And he goes through, failure is not an option. I have mixed emotions about this, right? Because I'm sitting there thinking, well, you're in this situation because of failure, right? Your oxygen tank blew up, right? It wasn't supposed to blow up. That's not a design feature. And so now it's just like, well, letting these guys die is not okay, right? That's his thing. Nobody's going to die on, no Americans died in space and not on my watch. So failure is not an option. But you know, I gotta say, failure, so one of the things that they had to deal with was, we have to get the carbon dioxide out of the air. We got these filters, and we got a square filter that needs to go into a round hole, and how do we do this? And we only have these supplies, right? But because of this failure, it made them, the students, ready to learn, right? Failure made these people ready to learn. And failure really is the teacher. And that's the part that I think we have to make more than lip service, right? You have to learn through failure. You have to learn by doing. And so, these guys, in real life, in the movie, right? They don't, in neither case are they able to say, oh, well, if I just do this, it's done, right? It's like, well, let me try this. It didn't work. But this part of it kind of worked. So let me modify it a little bit. Well, how about this? Let's try a different idea, right? And so they iterated and had failure, but failure was teaching them, and failure teaches us, right? That's, again, failure is not an option. There's a lot of bravado in that, but it's wrong. Like, we can't tolerate failure, but we have to get the failure, we have to work through failure to get to where we need to be, right? And, failure always looms over us. It's always above us. It's over our shoulder. It's behind us. It's lurking, it's out there, because, death always wins. There's no thing that lasts forever. No thing made by man lasts forever. And so we have to say it's all around us. It can literally and figuratively be a killer, right? If we fail, it could, people could get hurt. You think about the Takata airbags, and, they started blowing up. Well, it started killing people, right? And, none of their competitors used their, accelerant, because it was kind of dangerous, right? And it became a killer, literally. So for us, the thing that we as quality warriors have to do is we have to provoke failure. We have to encourage the people we work with to provoke failure as much as we can when we have control, right? So when we're, passing a test, like our technician said, is not okay. You don't pass a test just to pass a test. You pass a test to say, yeah, I've got this much margin. Of course, I want to know what my true margin is. If I could test a failure, that would be ideal. Because, if it blows up, we want it to blow up in the lab, right? We don't want it to blow up in the field. So as much as we can, that's what we want to, failure, it's not an option. It's our teacher, right? And we want this teacher, we want to respect this teacher. We want to encourage, hey, failure is not the enemy here. Failure is our teacher. And that's really, really important, because so many people get stuck. Oh, we've got this timing, and we, everything's got to be perfect. Well, anybody who's worked in automotive industry for any amount of time has had to deal with things being rushed and then having to be redone, at the recall. That's just a terrible, terrible situation. So, continuing with the situation, right? We have a line, and above the line and below the line, we have this idea of, if you're acting above the line, right, you take ownership, you're accountable, you're committed, you're active, you're going to be perceptive, you're courageous, right? You have these things. And if you're below the line, you're engaging in blaming, helplessness, maybe denial, passivity, whining, cowardice. Everybody goes up and above and below the line. But where you go when you're under stress, right? Where do you end up? Where do you end up? Now, if you're the sort, well, if you're dysfunctional, you probably end up below the line. And let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because there's this thing called the Steve Cartman. It's called the drama triangle. And he basically says, hey, this is a game. This is a game. And you have 3 roles in this game. You have the rescuer, you have the victim, and you have the persecutor. And anybody can start the game, any of the other 3 roles. For example, the rescuer can like go over and say, "Oh, let me help you with this. I see that you've got this problem, and I can help you." And then the the victim has to agree to play, right? By saying, "Oh, okay, well, I'll accept the help," either by saying nothing or by saying yes, right? Silence is acceptance. Not saying no and refusing it. That's the only way not to get engaged in the game. But okay, so now the rescuer is trying to help you, and then the victim can switch to persecutor and attack the rescuer, right? So now you switch roles. So now the victim switched to the role of persecutor, is saying, you're messing things up, and you're not, you're so dumb, whatever, right? This game can be played by a minimum of 2 and an unlimited number of people, okay? But it's a dysfunctional thing. It's switching roles. It's again, it's dysfunction. And the reason I bring it up here is because, if we're aware of these roles, then you can also be aware, hey, this is happening. Oh, this person is persecuting. Do I have to play? No. Oh, this person's acting like a rescuer. Oh, this person's playing victim. But again, it's a game. It's dysfunctional. And, for us as quality people, we don't want to play dysfunctional games. Even though, we get drawn into them. I'm not going to say I'm innocent here. But, at least we can put words to it. We can put roles to it. And that can help us break that malady. And, of course, when we're dealing with situations, again, under stress, there's the fight or flight, and you have to be prepared for both. Sometimes people just become, again, if you're in a crisis situation, some people become really, really, how to say, real aggressive, real difficult to work with. And then there's others that disappear. Like, where did they go? So, again, that's something we have to be mindful of as we're serving, our people through our function and quality. So before we go on to strategy, let me see. Yeah, so Michael and Leitner said, we can find a bunch of things to address. Oh, yeah, that's okay. So any quality professional can find a dozen things to address every day. How do you decide as a warrior when to fight and when to wait for a more favorable opportunity? Yeah. So, the spirit of attack is, I heard the phrase in reference to a fighter pilot, and from World War II, is a guy named Adolf Galland, and he shot down like 104 airplanes. And he always said, the best machine doesn't matter; it's the spirit of attack, right? But if you think about what they would do, is the first thing is ambush is the absolute best way for a fighter to attack, right? You have some unsuspecting opponent out there, and you leap on them without them being aware. So in the quality, what are those opportunities that we have to say, hey, this is fertile, and it's something that we can make a big impact on, right? Because if you get into a dogfight, it could take, again, going back to the airplane fight type thing, you're mixing it up, it takes a long time. The quick success is generally the one that we want, because again, we're trying to increase influence, right? Like, hey, this person sees things, this person, helps us in really effective ways. So generally, I would say, you pick the fight where you can say, hey, if we go in here, we can get a win, because success builds success. That should always be, even if it's a small success, if you can bring one person on, that's the ideal case. Now, sometimes the fights pick you, right? Sometimes you're the one who gets attacked by the others. And, you have to turn around, and with the strength of your tools and your knowledge, right? We deploy our knowledge of quality tools. We deploy our power of statistics and so forth, like to understand the situation and solve it. But generally, if we're looking around saying, hey, there's opportunity here, which ones will get us the kill, right? Which will get us the win? And again, some of the others, like, you could get in there and it's going to be a mess and it's going to get all tar baby sticky. I would try to avoid that unless I was thrown in, right? That would be kind of how I would judge it. It's like, again, the fighter pilots would dive out of the sun and shoot up the other guy if they had the chance, because that's the best way, right? The quick, powerful win, overwhelm. But if if you have that, that's how I would pick it. But again, if you have the one where it looks like, again, it's a tar baby, it's like, why do I want to get sucked into this? And those generally happen because somebody's trying to wash their hands of a problem and they want it to be yours, right? So I have been in cases where they ask me to go help, and then, all right, I'm here, and they basically push me in front of the customer to take the punches, right? Well, that wasn't what I signed up for. I mean, I can handle it, but again, sometimes you get to pick the fight, sometimes the fight picks you. But when you get to pick the fight, pick one to win. So let's talk strategy. I'm going to be very brief on strategy. So basically, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. I mean, I live by this. If you get a well stated problem, you pretty much can get it solved because you understand, like, which product or process is affected. Are you clear about that? Who's the customer? What is the customer's complaint? Why are they unhappy? And then where did the problem occur? When did the problem occur? How big is this problem? Like, how big is that gap between expectation and reality? And basically, if you get these questions answered clearly, most of the time it's execution, right? Most of the time. So to me, step number one, the key to winning as a quality warrior is clearly understand the problem. Get it well stated, because that puts you in a powerful position. Now, there's a couple ways that we, common typical ways that we can do our investigations, right? Now, we can do it from the part of, well, let's look at like causes. We can do it scientifically, like what things could potentially create the result, the cause or the effect that we're seeing, right? That's one way of doing it. It's a scientific approach. Twist the knobs and see what happens. That's best for what I would call created problems, like you're trying to push the limits on something that's not really dissatisfying right now, but you want to extend it. And the other is what I would call found problems, where, hey, we have a deviation from expectation, right? And then we'd use like, crime scene investigation, the forensic approach, what's the evidence, what can we discount or include based on the evidence that we generate, right? So those are the two basic strategies. And we have to be mindful, both of them work. They're more powerful in certain situations, and again, we're trying to learn. So sometimes one works better for learning than the other. And, but we have to be flexible. Then we get to, again, the thing is, we're looking for patterns. I guess that's one of the things that's really important. As we apply a strategy, the strategies all involve seeing the non-random pattern that gets us to the root cause and then eventually to the seed of the root cause. Because in our minds, we want patterns. If you look at the left, you see something and it's like you want to organize that in some way. Your brain just does that, And I don't know about you, but for me, it's a little bit distressing to see a disorganized pattern. I'm just like, okay, how, is there, what's the, is there a pattern in there? But again, using our quality tools, we can help figure out, well, what is there a meaning in this pattern, or is it just truly random, right? And so that's, again, that's going back to, is the way to find that forensically or scientifically, right? So that's my briefest section. I could go on long time about that, but I'm already a little over my goal. So let's talk about skill. So the important thing here is data, right? We have to take our data and turn it into something. And one of the big issues that we face is, once we turn this data into something, sometimes people take it a little personally, right? They are in love with whatever it is, their design, their process, their method, their whatever. They have their baby, and if you do something, they can say, hey, you're calling my baby ugly. And really, that's one of the reasons why I tell people, if you're going to come up with something, if you're going to come up with a proposal for a design or a fix, I want at least 3, because if the team puts forward 3 ideas, the chances are greatly diminished that they're totally in love with any one of them. That coming up with the 3 ideas, you can ask them questions and say, well, what's the strength of this one? What's the weakness? And if they do it for all 3, they dissociate. If they have one idea, it's their baby, and they take it personally when you do not, throw flowers at their feet. So again, we got to be disciplined about it. We got to generate this data, but sometimes you end up saying, hey, this thing's ugly, and the emotional response may not be what you hope. But again, that's something we are going to be disciplined. We're going to be truth tellers, and of course, measurement system. I just talked about data, but what's critical here is the data truth or lies. You know, it happens that the system's not, the methods aren't correct. One person does the measurements a certain way on this instrument, not a different person does it. So you don't have matching results. I had a case where there was an offset hard programmed into a computer, and that led us to reject material. And we spent 6 weeks trying to figure out, trying to fix the production system when it was all in a hard coded offset in the tester, right? I mean, it was repeatable, but it wasn't accurate. So, again, this is super important. Measurement system analysis is not that hard. It's and if your life is in measurement, you have to know, is the measurement good? And when I talked about the technician saying, passing parts is their job, a lot of times it would happen that, okay, the test wasn't run quite right. And generally it's easy to check the test first, right? Before you go tear apart your product. So it's always good to say, hey, if our results are different than we expect, are we sure that our measurement system is okay? And if our measurement system is okay, then yeah, we got to fix the design, and that's a really important thing that the quality team does, is get the, the product or process developers to know if their design's okay. The presentation of data, be courageous. So it shocks me how often people do not put their names on their reports. If you're going to do something, and as an engineer, you're a professional, or even if you're not an engineer, if you're a professional, your name should be on your report. And I was guilty of occasionally not doing that. And every time that I ever, I start thinking back, every time I didn't want to put my name on the report, why was that? Oh, maybe because I wasn't as persuaded that this was the, I wasn't persuaded that this was the really that strong, right? But you know what? Step up, put your name on it. And, if there's a problem with it, you deserve getting feedback. I mean, feedback's good. Failure's okay, right? If we're learning from it. The other thing that I see very regularly is not having a conclusion. I have seen so many times where a graph is presented and there's no conclusion. It's like, what does this mean? Is it okay? Is it not okay? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What does this mean? And, I've been in meetings where this has happened, that the chief engineer is coming out of a different meeting and they come into this one and they see a graph and they interpret it in reverse, because in the previous meeting, the reverse was, bad, and then, or good or whatever. And then you're running after the chief saying, no, let me correct what you're thinking, right? But we need to be courageous here. Put your name on it. Put a conclusion, right? Those two things are required. You can't be wishy-washy, because if you are, you're basically giving up your authority, your power, your influence. And then, the final slide here is, practice. You have to practice to be good at this, right? I mean, these tools are not self-evident, right? If they're not necessarily easy. I mean, they require, sometimes, our quality tools require that we change our thinking, and our, we have to like stretch our brains in ways that kind of hurt. But it's not just practice, right? Because practice makes permanent. We need deliberate practice. That means we're doing stuff against a standard. Like, when I do this, how does it come out? Oh, that means I have to adjust. You know, I was listening to Jeffrey Liker, you know, the guy who's written the Toyota Way, talking about deliberate practice golfing. And he said, you know, my son took lessons and then I started, you know, at the driving range and I just did what I did, right? And the son comes over and says, practice moving your wrist a certain way. And then, you know, oh, okay, but it's hard. Deliberate practice is hard because the feedback, you know, repeating the same action over and over again until you become good at it, you know. But that's the key. How do we build up our skill set? Well, you know, you have to practice. You have to practice. If you're playing music, right, you practice scales. But you have to do these things in order to have the strength, right, and the muscle memory or the mindset so that you can successfully deploy your skills, right? So this is the key element of becoming the quality warrior. So with that, I'm wrapping. I've covered the topics, the items that I wanted. You know, the quality, the role, the mind, the situation, the strategy, and the skills. So I don't know if there's other questions or comments. I see a comment, measure twice, cut once. Yes. Yeah. Double check the prints. Make sure you have the current version. Yes.
Keith, the great presentations. Congratulations. I think you explained so well. Particularly, you know that today's audience, you have quite a few the students. And then,
oh, are there? Okay.
So yeah, thank you. And then also actually I reviewed the attendance today. I found one of my colleague, Mr. Jason Foley. I'm not sure if he's still here. He left questions about 1 hour ago. I think he's.
Oh yes,
here.
yes.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce him. Hey Jason. Well, he muted himself, but anyway, Jason is the field engineer from the TMAC.
Oh, okay, excellent.
For MIT. And then he joined the TMAC. From my best knowledge, is about 2-3 years. And then he used to be, also involved in teaching in the quality ISO 9000 and others. So I believe his participation actually is great.
Oh, excellent.
So anyway.
Well,
yeah.
I'm glad Jason was able to join us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what happens,
I'm here, guys. I'm sorry. I just had a lot of background that I couldn't I couldn't unmute.
Hey Jason, do you want to say something or?
Not really. I mean, I'm sorry. What in context? What is it, Bill? I had to come back from something.
Well, Bill was introducing you as a member of TMAC. And,
oh, great.
You know.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a certified black belt. Been doing work in El Paso since 1991. I went to work for Elcom. I was a quality analyst back then, and do lots of really cool things with TMAC. For example, we'll be doing a 5S class over the next 3 days. And enjoyed your presentation. Thank you very much, Keith.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you.
Sorry about that, guys. A little awkward, but thank you.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Kind of pick on you, by accident. So anyway, yeah, so Keith, I think as you mentioned in your presentations, I mean, the quality actually is the kind of very critical in terms of industry. And then also the key thing is the person I feel like, the importance of quality. In fact, they they can save a lot of the resources, right? And then save the company a lot of let's say the money and make the company more successful. So
yeah.
I think, yes.
Well, I think what the biggest concern that I have is I see too many quality organizations view themselves kind of as paper pushers. right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part that really, it hurts my heart, because I think they're capable of so much more, right? And
Right.
and you look at all the documents that we do. You know, I see Michael Anleitner here, and you know, Michael's just awesome about his ways of doing like the failure mode and effects analysis. And
Right.
and you know, if you do a great failure mode effects analysis, you understand your state, right?
Right.
It's not a document you shove into a folder just so you know, the supplier quality engineer can say, yep, there's an FMEA document. It's like, no, this is a thing that, you know, you can say, where we know where we are today, we know these are the risks. It's a valuable document, but you have to view yourself as something more than a paper pusher, right?
Right.
That's the part that, you know, again, we help make people, we can help make the team way better.
Yeah, definitely.
Keith,
Yes.
when I was at Ford in the 1970s, which takes you way back, the Supplier Quality Assurance Organization actually had a motto. They call it the 4 Ps of quality. Have you ever heard that one?
No.
Push, paper, pretend, and pray.
Oh my God.
Hey, Keith,
Well,
Ricardo Rios, I think, had a question earlier. I don't know if you can read it
oh,
in
did I
the
miss
chat.
that?
Would the level of courage be in function of the audience, i.e. if it is the CEO and other senior managers? I don't know if that was read or not.
Oh no, I guess I missed that. You know, it's kind of funny because it's a little unusual. You know, if you're fearful of retribution, right? Generally, CEOs are nobody to worry about because they got too much stuff, right? This just, you know, they're like, okay, this, you know, they go to one plant, they have some angry, you know, person, and they go to another plant, they have another angry person. It's like, yeah, it's just part, you know, they just blow it off. The person who would be, you know, retribution oriented typically is like the local guy going, oh my God, this person said something. You know, but I think, you know, courage, you know, courage is like taking, you know, measured risk, right? And generally, I think if you keep your focus on who you're going to serve, um, you know, I guess if that motivates you, then you know, it's not that big an effort, right? It's like, yeah, we're going to do this because we're going to take the right risk. We're going to try to help. But you know, again, the CEOs, as far as like fear of retribution, like my experience with CEOs is they're just too busy, right? They're not gonna to worry about us. You know, it's generally like the manager in your area that if you and let's face it, if you've got that kind of manager, you have a toxic manager, and you should be looking for other opportunities, right?
I was about to say that. You're probably in the wrong job.
Yeah, well, the wrong place, right?
Place. Wrong place. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, Diana has Andrade says, hey, I hope all organizations, all levels understood the importance of having a quality focus independently of their function, role. Yeah, it really, I think that can amplify your you know, what you do. Again, you know, the quality tools really help us, but if we understand, again, the key issue is it's not about pushing paper, right? It's about understanding the state, right? And if we say, yeah, why are we collecting this data? Well, it's because we want to understand, is it helping? If not, well, let's quit. So let's see. Yeah, so Javier Martinez is saying, changing the perspective or the perspective quality war, the agent of quality in an organization is something challenging, but we need to start with ourselves. Absolutely, right? I mean, we have to be examples because again, it's our you know, it's the way people look at us, right? It's the reputation that we create, and they'll say, hey, well, yeah, he walks the walk, right? So let's see. Remember my young days as a true warrior. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Okay. So one question that often gets asked is the slide deck going to be available? And yes, it will be. Although, because I was making changes, I will be updating it, and I'll be including comments in the notes section. So I'll have a PDF posted to our ASQ 1401 website probably tomorrow. Again, it'll be the slide, but also with notes, so that I think this makes more sense.
Hey, Case, I have the one last questions. Yeah.
Well, what's the question?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just curious, how you envision of the future of the quality engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, for example, not right now, the smart manufacturing is very much popular, right? I mean, because everything is become like smarter. And of course, there's a bunch of we call the digital quality engineering or
Mm-hmm.
cyber quality engineering. And I'm just curious, what is your visions or envisions for future of the quality engineering?
Oh, well, I look like the quality 4.0, and I think about that, and I said, well, first, are you doing quality 1.0 okay? Because all this builds on top of each other. And, in that regard, I think changing the perspective, like what does quality do, and being able to say, oh, quality is the organization to help us see our true state, right? That makes it flexible regardless of what generation. Like if you start talking about Internet of Things, and automation and so forth. Yeah, but we need to answer the question of state. And I was telling you, I mentioned about this production line that, it has a computer on it collecting data, but the way they analyze it was to write it down on a piece of paper and then hand it to another person to type it into Excel, right? That is amazing to me, because they aren't saying, wait, we want our quality team. The quality team didn't see itself as a way of saying, we want to generate good data so that we can run this line really well. They said, oh, we collect data because that's our job, right? But if you change it to say, what's the purpose of this group? Well, it's to let us know what we're doing now. What's our state? Do we have to, do we have to react to something? Do we keep going? What's going on? So regardless of, what generation of quality we're talking about, if we reduce it to that, I think it makes it easy for us to explain to others, and to the leadership in an organization, say, this is what our group should be doing. Is it doing that for you? Are you satisfied with that? Do you feel like this gives you the power to run your facility better, your operations better, right? And I'm not just talking about manufacturing plants. This could be a hospital. It could be, a restaurant. It could be, a logistics organization. It doesn't matter. But like, I need to know the state. And how do I learn that? Hopefully the quality team is the one leading the charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
You received a lot of positive comments about your presentation, Keith. Thank you very much. I'm not surprised, to be honest with you, but like always, I was very interested in finding out how many of these are students that any of the students found this interesting or had any questions, or maybe they're a little bit shy asking the question in front of everybody. But we appreciate the participation, and hopefully it can keep growing. That's very encouraging.
Well, I certainly appreciate the attendance and the participation. I guess we'll wrap up now. I just want to say next month we're going to have our speaker is going to be Manny Trevino from Flagstone Foods, a food manufacturer here in El Paso. I don't have the title of his presentation yet, but I will be working with him on that. And then,
Hello.
yes, Atusa.
Hello, Kate. I want to appreciate your presentation. It was really good, excellent. Every word and every slide that you showed, it's increased my emotion. Or this is that I want to be. Or this is that I want to do. I want to be really, to continue being a really quality warrior. I appreciate. So,
Excellent. Well, Atusa, I'm glad you could join us. I'm glad Duke sent you our way. And as I said, the presentation will be on our ASQ1401.org website tomorrow. And if you can't find it, feel free to reach out to me. You can go through my ASQ or.
Thank you.
All right. So again, next month we'll have a speaker from about food manufacturing, and we again will have a Zoom meeting until this pandemic winds down each month on the third Tuesday. So are there any other questions or comments?
So excuse me, so
Yes.
Dr. Kiss. So I have a question.
Yes.
So first, so it's a good presentation. So I learned a lot from your presentation. So I have one question. So which method can be used to improve the quality?
Oh my goodness. There are so many methods, right?
Yes.
So basically, I think before anything else, it's the definition, right? I mean, regardless of what you do, I would always focus on defining like what is the current state and what's the future state you want. Because once you go through that step, then you can start evaluating like what tools might be appropriate. Hey, do you need to do a designed experiment? Should you do some kind of root cause analysis type approach? So, but the first step to me is always problem definition, and then from there, tools tend to become obvious, like which one is most suited. But yeah, there's just so many. It's just like depends. It's I hate to give a consultant answer here, but it depends. So
Okay. So are there many softwares can be used to deal with the quality?
there's, I guess, I would discourage it in a way because I think a lot of it can be done on paper. I think a lot of it should be done on paper because one of the things about improvement is iteration, right? And like if I'm doing a process map, for example, I will do it on paper. I'll do it on paper. I'll probably do 3 or 4 versions on paper before I would even consider putting it on a computer. And the reason for that is that the overhead is so low for throwing it away, right? Because the first time you do something, first time you walk a process, you don't know what you don't know. And then you do your map and then you think, well, wait, what about this? And then, you start scribbling on it and whatnot. So a lot of times that is the fastest way to make progress, and start to clarify your thoughts. So yeah, I mean, there's software out there. There's plenty of it. It's just, I think for number one, depending on the scale of problem, software might be too much, right? If you're trying to fix something real small and local, but really, even if you're trying to do something bigger, your first iterations are going to be on should be on paper, just because you can iterate really quickly, and as problem solving is actually a learning process. And so you start figuring out things, you start asking questions, you learn the answer, and you discover things, what you thought was important wasn't, or what you thought was important really is really important. But yeah, I tend to not want to use a computer so much, except, especially in the early stages, except where I really have to communicate out. Like if I was helping out somebody here and I need to be, giving, a report to somebody in Michigan, right? Yeah, it's got to be on a computer, right? But as much as I can, I would start with paper, and then, but there's, for example, like Minitab has a package for documenting and reporting continuous improvement activities. There's a number of companies that do. I think Power Steering is another one. Oracle has some. So there's a bunch of them out there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's attendance. It's run quite long, so I really do appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback. I'm as I said, if you're interested in the presentation, it will be up on our ASQ 1401. I will also try to put it into our events. It shouldn't be a problem having it on our events in our my ASQ site as well.
Thank you again.
Thank you,
All right.
Keith. Good night, everyone.
9.
Bye.
Thank you, Keith.
Hey,
Good
my
night.
pleasure. Good night, guys.
Thank you, and good night to you.